And we're live. Hey guys, we made it. It's episode 1 of Whiskey Watches and Wheels. Hopefully, there's 9 people at home watching. Uh, so I guess we need to set the foundation for everyone listening at home. I am Matt.
I'm Kevin.
I'm James.
And I'm Casey.
Fantastic. So for those listening at home, if you're looking for a well thought out, instructional, deeply informational podcast, you're in the wrong fucking place. It's not us. All right. Now, if you're looking for 4 knuckleheads to shoot the shit and talk about shit that we like, then you hang around because you'll have hopefully a great time.
And we're drinking, so
we're drinking. What's everyone drinking? What's everyone drinking?
I've got some Pursuit United Old Fashioned.
Okay. James?
I have Powers, John's Land.
Kev?
And I have Old Jack, because he never does me wrong.
There you go. And I have the finest of just plain Diet Cokes. So someone's got to stay sober on this thing, right? Someone who's running the board. So I guess we need to just talk about kind of like how we met. You know, what brought us together. I mean, it was, a year and a half ago or so? 2 years ago.
Two years.
2 years ago on a Porsche rally in the middle of the mountains that we kind of all met. And we each have sports cars. I guess we can start there. You know, I have a 2007 997 911, and I think we're all pretty much Porsche guys, although we have a passion for everything. You know, but primarily we love Porsches. James has got a little bit deeper collection. Well, Kevin's got a great collection as well, more than maybe Casey or I. But Kevin, why don't you talk about what you have?
I have a 991 GT3, a Porsche, Mercedes C63 AMG, hot rod, a 1915 T-Bucket, and a 1980 that I'm getting restored. 911 SC, and a couple other cars. But yeah.
Oh, and you got the sweetest of vans for camping.
I have a conversion that I did myself. I think it's 2021 Transit that I converted that I can stand on the roof, camp in for races. 4Runner,
shag carpet up the walls and on the ceiling.
Yes, I used to have a lot of hot rods and got tired of tinkering with them, and they would run and then break and fix them. And so I sold them all except for the 1915. And maybe on the next podcast, we'll kind of show some of our cars. And I kept that one. So I've had that the longest. I'm really into motorcycles as well. That's my business. So, James, what you got?
I'm thinning the herd at the moment. I've just got rid of my 1988 BMW 535 IS. That is now in San Francisco. I currently have a BMW 1991 318 IS that is in really great condition. That'll be going on Bring a Trailer soon. And that'll be the rest of my BMWs out the door. And I have a 1966 912, Porsche 912 that I just picked up. And that is my next hot rod project. I have a 1983 911 SC. That's a hot rod, pretty extensive modifications, including a new 3.2 put in that. So it's a little sleeper. And I have a 991 Carrera S that I use for these rallies that we met on. So,
Mr. Casey, why don't you tell us about your wonderful car?
So I guess I've been a Porsche fan forever, but my first Porsche I bought was a 14 Cayenne diesel that my wife drives. Secondly, I bought an 08 911 S that's currently getting an engine built. And lastly, daily driver is a 2008 Cayenne Turbo.
Very
Nice.
cool. And me, when you talk about your bikes,
Okay, go back to the bike. Currently, it's a 2011 esque GSXR 750. It's more or less an eBay special. It's been wrecked and put back together so many times. Who knows what it really is? It's not titled. It's a I don't know, piece of shit. But it's a blast.
That's all that matters. And like you said, I have a 2007 997 911 wrapped like the freaking melted Crayola crayon box. And I'm an old man. I'm not an old man, but listen, I have an old man bike because I have a wife that nags at me. And so I have a 2019 Can-Am Spyder F3T. So, which is like driving dude, it's like driving a Barca Lounger though, man. I took that thing from Orlando. I'm from Orlando. All the way to Asheville, North Carolina, did the entire Blue Ridge, came back, and it was like driving a couch. It was great.
I didn't know we were talking about bikes too. I mean, I got a whole list of those too.
Well, speak out, man. It's very simple: whiskey, watches, and wheels. So if it's got wheels,
I just got done restoring a 1963 CB77 Superhawk, which was Honda's first, I guess, super bike. Fully restored it from ground up. I have two more I got to restore. And I have a heap load of Honda Ruckuses that are fully custom, Honda Groms, Honda Metropolitans, 1970 Suzuki T500 two-stroke, a CT70 that is being kind of modded right now. And keep on watching. You'll get to see some of these because they're pretty extensive.
That's
what
awesome.
Are you doing over there, Casey? Is that your mic?
It's not me.
Yeah, what is that? So, Kev, I want to get a Ruckus, and Stacy won't let me. But maybe if I'm getting one from you, she will. So we need to have a conversation.
There you go.
Yeah, you can't leave the driveway with it.
No doubt.
So, why don't we tell everybody? Kind of, I know we met on a drive. How this came about and what we
think we're going to do.
It was kind of a joke.
It was completely a joke. I mean, listen, we all met on a rally, and like a lot of people do, I mean, it's all about extracurricular activities. So we met on this rally, became quote unquote fast friends. Rally ends, and we're all over the place. Kevin and I are both in Florida, but James and Casey are elsewhere, and so we thought, well, let's have this, text chain. And so that became where we're constantly texting. And one day we were joking around about podcasts and this and that. And I said, we should have one called Whiskey, Watches, and Wheels. And literally a month later, here we are. So it was that fast.
Yeah. Well, maybe not as fast as our run group, but
no, this is true.
We were actually, all of us were in a group. We had, I think in the beginning, 2 more people. But we really kind of stuck together and really every day talked like schoolgirls. That's the name of our little group.
What's really funny? Yeah, what's really funny is that the first day I spent the whole day trying to get out of the run group because I wanted to go a little bit quicker. Mm-hmm. But as the day went on, it's just like,
it wasn't my bothering. We had somebody in the back that was slow.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's like, why am I bothering? I'm really enjoying hanging out with these guys, and we're having a blast. And we made a wrong turn or two, and we got lost together, but we stayed together. And in the end, it wound up just being us. And it felt like maybe we were the outsiders, so why not stick together? And
the next this past year we just had it. And we said, hey, we're gonna stick together. We're gonna be in the same group. And this time we actually ran a lot faster because we didn't have any slow people. And a lot of people actually joined our group because I think they saw our bond that we had and how we get along. And, we weren't cliquey. We're very personable people. And I think we bring everybody kind of into our group and stuff. So we mingled a lot with everybody.
Sure. And I think that you explained it well, Kevin, saying that we don't have any egos. So I think that's appealing when, wow, maybe this is my first rally and what group am I going to latch on to? And it's not that we go slow. It's just that we're also realists, and many of us had passengers with us that maybe didn't have the stomach that we do for it.
Well,
but, go ahead.
That was my wife.
That was one of the things I found interesting, being that this was my first rally, last year, was that you come in not knowing literally anyone, right? You don't know how anyone's going to react to whether it's your car or something you say, because God knows what's going to come out of my mouth. But it was nice to kind of mesh with everybody, and then to have that keep going. I don't know that that's necessarily the norm. I don't know that any of those other run groups retained any of those friendships, or you're going to see them again next year. And you're like, hey man, how you been doing? But this has been quite different and refreshing, really.
Yeah,
well, it hasn't stopped. Yeah, it hasn't stopped in 2 years
on a daily basis, and talk to Matt. We all talk on a daily basis.
Sure.
But like Casey said, a lot of times you're getting a group, and then there might be one or two guys you're like, this guy's a dickhead. That wasn't like that with us. We all got along really good, and we're all different age groups. I mean, we're all kind of the same, but we just didn't have that. So this is why we're doing this, just to goof off.
I don't even think it comes down to the age at all. It really comes down to your common interests. If the title of it says everything, our first year, we all know a little bit about bourbon, and then we talk to Casey, and all of a sudden Casey's like just dropping knowledge on what we should be grabbing. And that just came out of nowhere. And now he's the guy we lean on to say, hey, what do you think of this? Should I grab this?
Like James said, no egos. We were literally in a liquor store. Me and James and Matt were like picking stuff, and Casey did not say anything, which is very unlikely now that we know him. He didn't say anything, and we said, well, what do you think? And he's like, oh, okay, cool. Casey, why don't you tell him about your collection?
Well, yeah, so the collection continues to grow, but it's currently, I think, at 215-ish bottles. But I think that night is when I introduced you to the cheapest good bourbon out there, right? Evan Williams White Label Bottle and Bond, $17.99, and it's awesome. It's a go-to. It should be a staple on everyone's bar. But you don't have to spend a ton of money just to enjoy good bourbon, and I think that's the common thought in the bourbon community, is that you got to have a BTAC or some unobtainium Buffalo Trace bottle, and it's just not true. There's a ton of good stuff out there for reasonable money,
even under $30.
Yeah, absolutely.
I may add that that Bottled and Bond was like truth serum that evening. Everyone was drinking on that and then just letting it go.
Yeah, then I talked to James, and he introduced me into a whole nother level of watch collection that, I love watches, as all of us do. We have that common bond. And I had told James that, hey, he had some old watch, and I was like, oh, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's a Seiko, blah, 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 blah. He tells me all about it. And I'm like, okay, that's cool.
I don't think you should skip over what watch you were wearing that weekend, though.
I was wearing a Rolex, Submariner.
Oh, I thought you were wearing a Pataki.
No. Oh, yes, maybe I was.
You were.
Yes.
You were.
And so
I'm wearing a 45-year-old Seiko.
So I was like, hey, I collect moon watches. And he's like, you never heard of a Seiko Pogue? Never heard of it. Shows me on the phone. Downhill from there, opened up the Pandora. He goes, you're going to go down Pandora's box.
It's a slippery slope.
I think I have I don't know, in the course of what, James? 1 year?
A year and a half, yeah.
A year and a half, probably 14, 15 Seikos. James kind of messed up and said, these are the picks that this is what I want, and this is what I have. And I
don't think I messed up at all. It's all about enjoying it. And,
Correct.
You showed me watches that you weren't going to grab that were of interest of mine or on my list. And then I would proceed to go that way and courteous enough to even offer watches to me. So that's part of the appeal is the community as well. No different than the bourbon community, no different than the Porsche community or BMW community or for that matter, any other car enthusiast in their favorite make and model, except for a Ford Mustang.
No Mustangs, but I do hope that if this little talk can do anything, really, is that allow people to see that these very niche groups or hobbies that people typically put way up on a shelf, like the high-end bourbons or high-end watches, Porsches, etc., should not be necessarily put up that high, that it should be enjoyed by everybody. And that if you just give people a chance and go talk to them while they're at the gas pump, or you notice somebody in the elevator with a nice watch on, the likelihood of them being generally receptive and kind is pretty high. And I think this group should be a reflection of that, is that, you know, random people coming together over, a silly weekend in the mountains turns into, a fairly good friendship and a group of guys that like being around each other.
And hopefully, I think that's what we're going to do too. Kind of maybe, I am the least, I think, as far as Porsche is concerned. I used to ask a lot of people, oh, I didn't know like 991.1.
Right.
I always said, what year is it?
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't know all the is it chassis codes? Chassis codes, yeah. Chassis codes. I don't know.
Internal designations. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but you have a huge Volkswagen background, though.
I do.
Yeah. So you have a big Volkswagen background. So I mean, so that helps.
Unfortunately, sometimes in certain Porsche communities, if someone says, "Oh, I have a 992 or I have a 912," and you don't know what that is, you're kind of snubbed.
Casey's our resident bourbon expert, and I don't know a whole lot about bourbon at all. These guys know a lot more than I do, but we wanted to kind of go over and touch base and really talk about what makes a whiskey a bourbon, or what makes a bourbon a bourbon. And so Casey's going to kind of educate us and give us a little knowledge tonight.
Hey, and also what makes a whiskey a rye?
Right.
A whiskey.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, all of that. So that question gets asked all the time, right? It's usually one of the first questions when somebody hears that, hey, you're into bourbon, what is a bourbon? So there's 5 general rules, and they're pretty basic. And as I was trying to do some research furthering my education, so I don't sound like an idiot, there's some things that I don't know if by law they are added, but it seems that some people have added some additional kind of rules. I don't know how true they are, so I'm not going to say them. But these are the 5 basic ones. First, it's got to be at least 51% corn. It's got to be majority corn. It has to be aged at least 2 years.
Okay.
It's got to be aged in a new oak barrel, any type of oak, but an oak barrel. No additional flavors added, and it's got to be made in the US of A. Those are the 5 basic rules.
So, okay, coming from a guy that's not a big bourbon drinker, I know one that we talk about, you have hints of tasting with vanilla and caramel and all that. So that's those
it's all the
flavors
wood.
Are natural. It's all from the wood.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. The percentage I hear is usually 80%, something like that, of the flavor of bourbon comes from the wood. You've got, the corn. There's some companies or distilleries that are putting out kind of what specific strain of corn they're using, and you can kind of taste some differences there. But mainly it's the time and the age, the time in the barrel and the weather conditions that the barrel sees. And that's why you see a lot of this bourbon. It's the best bourbon, I think, comes from Kentucky, but there's reasons why. But one of the reasons is the climate. You can have a rick house that's maybe down in a valley up on top of a hill. Kentucky's got, the rolling bluegrass, right? And so down in the bottom of the valley, you're going to get some colder temperatures, even during the summer. The cold air will fall into the valley, and you'll cool those rick houses to a greater level. Up on top of the hills, oftentimes you'll have more wind. The temperature won't drop as low in the summertime. And so those differences will change the amount of liquor that goes into the wood and is contracted out of it, right? So the more the wood, the bourbon moves in and out of that wood, how deep it goes, how long it stays before it's pushed back out, all that imparts flavor into your bourbon.
Is there a minimum time it has to be in a barrel for a bourbon?
2 years to be called a bourbon, a straight bourbon specifically. 2 years in the barrel. If it's under 2 years, you're whiskey, and then over 2 years, there's no restriction. As we know, like Old Pappy is Van Winkle stuff is really pushing the limits of aging. They're really the only ones that are at least on a big scale that I can think of off the top of my head that are putting bourbon away for 15, 20, 23 years, at least the time, because a lot of people, myself included, really get over oaked and don't like that kind of tannin, oaky, super oaky flavor. It loses a lot of that sweetness.
So you went over 2 rules. The corn, 2 years
51%.
51%. What's the other ones?
It had to be a new barrel, right? It has to be a brand new barrel.
New barrel, right?
And USA.
This
USA,
is
okay.
So not Kentucky, though?
Nope, it's a USA product. Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, the Ohio River Valley. You can look across the country, and that's really where the best bourbon comes from. Although Texas is really coming up and producing a lot of good stuff. I've got a bottle from Wyoming that's really good stuff. New York is producing some really good bourbon. So there's other places that are producing.
New York City.
Yeah. Finger Lakes. They're producing some good bourbon.
And I think a lot of people thought that, like James just alluded to, it had to be in Kentucky. I thought that as well, like early on, like you had to have it. Bourbon had to be in Kentucky, but
so is that propaganda? Was that the marketing tool in Kentucky to keep it?
And originally it was, at least the stories go, that it's originally a Kentucky product because the whiskey was obviously a form of currency, right? Using the corn. And they would send it down to Louisiana, okay, to New Orleans. And so the barrels that would come from Kentucky would generally be older because it had a longer way to come down the river. And so they started calling it Kentucky whiskey, etc. Nobody really knows where the name bourbon came from. There's lots of different kind of legends and stories about it, but there's no, confirmed answer. But the story is that it comes down the river. It takes longer. People are noticing that it has a different color. The flavor is different than standard like White Lightning moonshine. And they start asking for Kentucky whiskey, and then it kind of turns into Kentucky bourbon. And
that kind of goes with a lot of liquors, though. I mean, you think about, stereotypes. You think of rum, you think of the Caribbean. You think of vodka, you think of Russia. You think of, moonshine, you think of the Southeast or the South. So, I guess that's kind of normal that with certain liquors, you associate a region or an area.
And I think also, too, because, like, technically Champagne's supposed to be from the Champagne, France.
France,
Cognac's supposed to be from Cognac, France. What about rye? Off the top of your head, the difference between rye and
rye off the top of my head, it is majority rye rather than corn. I don't know the exact percentage. I'm sure I can look it up here real quick. But it's just going to not be majority corn. Here, rye, 51% rye. So that kind of goes right in line. But rye is usually in all your bourbons, or most of the bourbons anyhow, just lower percentage. You'll see them in 30%, 20%, all those mash bills. And then you have a little bit of malt, and that's generally for the pH balance, I believe, for the sour mash. So the malt's usually like 5%, but you got like 4 grains now that increase that percentage, and you got some people experimenting and stuff now. So it's as the bourbon market is back to kind of an expanding mode, you get lots of different stuff. The other kind of profile that people are generally aware of is Tennessee whiskey, like your Jack Daniels. The difference there is that they do cold filtering, which is running the post-aged bourbon through maple charcoal. And that'll take a lot of the impurities out of it. It changes the flavor. It's no longer, I think I have some bottles. Jack Daniel's uses a quote Tennessee whiskey on their bottle. There, I think, is some still up in the air on whether or not you can technically call it a bourbon or not, because that charcoal will impart flavor. And obviously one of the rules is you cannot add any additional flavor. So that's kind of the different thing about Tennessee whiskey. And they're trying really hard to coin that now and put that as their marketing thing. You got Kentucky bourbon, Tennessee whiskey. And they are even adding to the Kentucky Bourbon Trail spots in Tennessee now to really kind of fill up that
cool.
corridor there with more kind of whiskey tourism.
It was very expensive to do bourbon because it takes so long, like 2 years minimum, right? So
it's extremely cash heavy, and no one really drinks 2-year bourbon. Bourbon's really, yeah. I guess they won't be a sponsor.
Unless you're using it as a mixer.
4 years really where it starts to turn. 5-6 year, you really start to get the real flavors. You've got some of the historical brands that will put a lot of 4-year stuff in their bourbon because they're going to
mix
volume.
it, right?
Yep. Yeah. But they'll impart some maybe 6 and 8 year stuff to bring out some of that good flavor and hold down some of that grainy, young.
So when you read a bottle and it says it's a blended bourbon or is blended, is that what it means? It's blending different ages, or
it can be, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring some of this up.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead.
No, that's okay. Because the TTB is very, very specific on the wording and the language that goes onto a bourbon bottle or their label. Okay. And so I have several bottles here to walk through because it's very important because historically, right, it's got to be, it's been a legislated and protected word, bourbon or straight bourbon. And so there's requirements. As we said, like if it's charcoal filtered or the Lincoln County process, it's called, it's probably a Tennessee whiskey. Okay. Then you have things like, take Angel's Envy. A lot of people will say, hey, this is one of my favorite bourbons. This is not bourbon. This has bourbon, or it was bourbon, but it is now a whiskey specialty. Okay. It had bourbon that's been secondarily barreled for whatever length of time. And on the label, this is actually one of the areas that the TTB has not really defined well, the secondary barreling process of what the label has to say. But Angel's Envy specifically says Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. We understand that. Finished in port wine barrels, this specific one. It's a great whiskey, but it's not necessarily,
it does say bourbon on it, though.
Because it does. But then it has what it was finished in. And that's where people, it's no longer bourbon once it's been flavored, right? That's in the basic rules.
Right.
And you or I have argued till I'm blue in the face that words have meanings and words mean something specific. And when it's finished, it falls out of the definition of what a bourbon is.
What's TTB?
What's tax and the government agency, Tax and Trade Bureau, and they govern all the labels, what has to be on there.
Oh, okay.
It's the man. The man is always keeping everything down, man.
That's right.
Okay.
Let me see. This is a Daviess County straight bourbon whiskey. And then Matt, you were asking, this one specifically says that it's a blend of 2 different mash bills.
Okay.
All right. Not everybody will say that, but this one specifically has that on the label. I think more information is better. Then we have Pursuit United, which I've brought up on here before. It's a blend, and it says explicitly that it's a blended whiskey. And on the back, they will actually tell you where the whiskeys are from and their mash bill. They don't tell you the percentage, but they'll tell you where they're from and their mash bill. Specifically, this has Kentucky, Tennessee, New York. Kentucky is, who do they use? Bardstown Bourbon Company. The New York is Finger Lakes. The Tennessee, they are contractually not allowed to tell you where it's from. And honestly, I don't know. I haven't figured that one out. But they do tell you the mash bill.
Now, isn't Bardstown a blended bourbon as well?
Bardstown Bourbon Company makes a blended whiskey. Yes,
Okay.
The whole Discovery series that they have, which is awesome. I had that we talked about that one evening here. But that's a great. But yes, it is a blended whiskey as well. Then we have some Rabbit Hole.
So let me ask you a question. So
yeah,
if they're saying that they're putting a whiskey from Bardstown, right, on that one bottle that you just said, that could be a blend of a whole bunch of different whiskeys?
I guess in theory it could. It is not. They tell you explicitly what the mash bill is. You can go on their site. It's not actually on this.
So
bottle.
they do make their own straight bourbon.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. They do. I don't know if I can't think of the name what their actual label is called that has their straight whiskey in it. Okay. But they also Bardstown Bourbon Company purchased Green River, and Green River has their own label out just called Green River. And they have a standard bourbon and a wheated bourbon that is really good. But here's
how
a
often,
rabbit.
So how much importance do you think a typical bourbon drinker, whiskey drinker is looking at these labels and making the decision solely on that, especially when there's a lot of the word games as far as what it's made up of? Is it, or do you think it's just, oh, I've heard this is good, I'm going to grab it?
I think
somebody like you, I think it would be more important that has the knowledge. I would
definitely say that I'm a very niche consumer. You know, the 0.01% of bourbon drinkers. I listen to bourbon podcasts. You know, I'm willing to talk about it. I read about bourbon. So no, I wouldn't say that I'm normal. I think the normal consumer goes and finds a label that they recognize, something they saw or had at a bar, a pretty bottle. I think that's important. I think that's why Angel's Envy.
That's universal. That doesn't just mean for bourbon and whiskey. That's universal.
Yeah. And then cost. I think cost plays a big role into it. The taters out there will also almost play the reverse of the cost, that anything that costs more must be better.
Right.
And specifically, I'll use this as the greatest example I know of off the top of my head is Elmer T. Lee. Elmer T. Lee is historically a $30, $35 bottle of bourbon that I used to buy at CVS and would pound it with Coca-Cola all through college.
And cough syrup.
Yes. And that bottle now is a $300 to $400 bottle.
Same one.
That same bottle. Only because it's, quote, hard to find, because they just don't produce very much of it. It's not that good. It's not. Wow. It's $30 bottle good. I mean, it's a fine mixer. You can drink it straight, but it's not special, and it sure as hell is not $300 or $400 worth.
Wow.
So here is a going more about the label. The Rabbit Hole Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, but no age statement, right? That's also important. We'll get to another one here in a second. They do have on the back, which you won't be able to read, but they have a minimum age statement of 3 year. So they're using at least 3 year bourbon in that. But they don't tell you obviously the percentage or how much of any aged product that they have in there. More straight, just bourbon whiskeys, Turkey 101, all the same mash bill. Unlike the Davies County that tells you they have two different mash bills, this is all one mash bill. Then we have, say, Old Louisville. And this is where you get into where reading the label can prevent you from overpaying for bourbon, because you have sourcing, right? You have a ton of new labels. You go to the liquor aisle now and it is full of labels that you've never seen or heard of, which is good. Bourbon's expanding. But what these companies do is all these people don't have license to distill their own product, nor have they had the time to distill their own product, right? We're talking at least 4 years to get a palatable product. So they're sourcing their bourbon. It's a fine thing to do. The biggest sourcing company would be MGP out of Indiana, okay? Or if you've heard of Remus Bourbon, that's MGP, okay? That's their in-house brand. They also call it Squib and something. Anyhow, so reading the back label where it has to, by law, say where it was distilled and bottled in, you can see in here, if I can get in front of the camera, it says it's distilled in Indiana, bottled in Louisville. That's important. It does not have to tell you the distillery in which it was distilled, but if it was Indiana, you can almost 99% say it was MGP.
So when you're making a blend, not to interrupt, but when you're making a blend, a company's making a blend, are they literally taking, like marrying two, or are they putting it through a process?
Two barrels or?
Yeah, like two or three or.
Yeah, if you're making something like Pursuit United, where you are taking three different barrels, but in this specific case, three different mash bills, so three different flavor profiles, they're experimenting all the way down and you almost like a chemist and mixing, hey, I want 2 more drops of this, what's the overall percentage of bourbon 1, bourbon 2, bourbon 3, and they're coming up with their blend. But yes, then they're taking it to a massive mixing tank, mixing it, and then bottling.
Because if you put it in a barrel, if you do anything to it to add flavor to it, again, then it's not a bourbon.
It's
Correct.
whiskey.
Correct.
And even if you were to distill it even more, then the alcohol content would change as well.
Correct.
Or even leaving it in a barrel, taking it and putting it in a barrel again, your content.
Which we would call that double oaked, right? You got like the Woodford double oaked or whatever. Putting it into a second new oak barrel is double oaking.
Okay.
And yeah, that's James's favorite. And then here's
real quick. So doing the double oak, the double barrel, that is to essentially give it an additional age, right? Instead of having it sit longer.
Well, it depends on the barrel, and it depends on how long. You can make a young bourbon, say a 2-year-old bourbon, and double oak it, put it into a second oak barrel, and it will add sweetness. It'll add that oaky, sweet oak flavor to it. So you can take a potentially unpalatable bourbon.
Yeah, that's to give it an older taste.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Just to speed up the process.
Yes. So
Can you take a barrel, a bourbon, dump all the stuff out, or say and use, it has to be new, right? So you couldn't take a bourbon, say a 2-year bourbon, put it into a we'll say a Pappy
This is
barrel.
an SAT question, by the way.
I'm asking
a word problem.
And pour that into it, because that does have to be a new barrel to be bourbon.
So at that point, it's going into the same territory that Angel's Envy is in, and it's going into just a secondary barrel, and it would be bourbon that's been secondarily barreled. So it would be a specialty product.
Okay.
Wow. Drinking this water sucks right now.
Whether it's a old Pappy barrel, which some would say, or I think even the scientists would say, the distillers will say that the bourbon takes all those sugars out of the barrel. And so if you took like a 10-year-old barrel and put new bourbon into it, the amount of flavoring, let's just call it flavoring, that they're going to get from that barrel is going to be minimal. So I doubt that that's something you'd want to do. Whereas when like Angel's Envy takes, what do they take, like tequila barrels or something else? Somebody takes some tequila barrels, or you can use rum barrel or whatever you're doing. Those things aren't aged in those barrels for very long. So you can take those barrels and still get more flavoring out of it because they didn't sit in there for 6 years.
we have a special guest today. Dave, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Van Epps.
And Dave is with Sonderwerks. So tonight we're going to talk to Dave extensively about his business and what he does.
Is with Sonderwerks or is Sonderwerks?
Well, it's a big company, Casey, but we've got about 16 people, but I am the founder of Sonderwerks. We'll go with that.
I like that better.
Yeah,
that's a great segue. How did you get into this business?
In 2018, I and some other partners of mine that were involved in a digital media company sold that company. And after putting a lot of years into that industry, I decided I was going to do something different. And I'd always been a Porsche fanatic. And as a result, an opportunity kind of landed in front of me as fate sometimes deals it. And I managed to acquire an upholstery business. And I thought that business was going to be valuable to the Porsche world. And the vision all along was that I would then bring in some mechanical work and then ultimately a body shop, which is kind of what I did. So I found some businesses locally in the Charlotte market that served those areas and some owners that I had gotten to know as friends. And they decided that it was a good idea to kind of sell out to me. And so I bolted on a mechanics business that specialized in air-cooled Porsches and performance. And then about a year later, a body shop. And that's kind of the origins of Sonderwerks, which technically started on January 1, 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and it's been a hell of a ride since.
And you're kind of known for, I know you do everything. So for the audience, we've talked, you've done almost complete build for me. James has done some work with you. And I mean, you guys are very good friends, but everybody loves, you did my interior. Everybody loves interior. So I'm going to bring up some pictures of some of the things that you do. And then you can kind of walk us through some of, everything that you do. And also, I know for me personally, I have sent people over to you. And, I try to tell them what they're getting with your service. So naturally, there's a lot of people that can get seat covers and they slip them on old seats and stuff. So I'm going to share kind of some of the things that I pulled off of your Instagram. And, you can talk a little bit about what these are, and I'll kind of just scroll through them and stuff. And as you're talking, I'll go through, some of the pictures and stuff.
Sure. Well, that's a set of Recaro Expert M's in black and white. Those seats are actually black with black and blue Pasha inserts on them. We do a lot of retro, Porsche fabrics and so on, and that's a set of hardback 993 seats for a client. The backs of those are actually color painted to the body of the car. Those came out beautiful.
I love that. Yeah.
I mean, it's a good look. Kevin, what we do, and I think those are your seats, Kevin, actually. Those are,
for sure.
Those are sports seats, 80s generation sports seats, third gen sports seats. All the Porsche seats are obviously made from Recaro. And as you're scrolling through those, I'll just add some of my comments. I get asked these questions a lot. Sportster CS in a blue
tartan?
to match the client's car. Well, it's a tartan, but it's a GTI. It's actually a Volkswagen GTI tartan. Blue stripe that picks it up. Look, those came out really nice. Love it.
What's interesting is that a lot of the VW materials work really well on the Porsche side.
Sure. All kind of some part of that same family. And it starts to get wilder and wilder. But one of the things that I find, those are actually a set of old school first gen comfort seats from, I want to say those are early 911. But we do a lot, and I just don't remember every specific pair, but I see a few other pair in the back there. That's a tool roll we make. We do some copies of tool rolls. I think that's using the Spirit of Le Mans tartan that's on that was custom done for a guy, and he wanted a matching yellow sound pad that we do too.
So let's go a little bit back to the seats again.
Sure.
Touch base in regards to when you take somebody's seats and they can be clearly, just weather damaged. what you do to the seat. You can just throw in some covers, or when you put your name on it, you're going to go through everything. I mean, for the listeners,
what normally happens.
I've seen your seats.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks, Kevin. But what always happens with these seats, especially on seats, leather seats in particular, is that the heat in the car, and we've all been into a 911 that has a bad dash that was leather covered and it shrunk. And so that's what happens with the leather as well on the seats. So as it heats up, the leather will shrink and ultimately start to compress the cushions underneath. So the fundamental seat, if you just then tried to go take an off-the-shelf cover, which is hopefully made to the original sizes and specs, and you put that on a seat that might have a compressed cushion on it, or 40 years of wear, it's going to fit like a bag. It's really, I kind of describe this as the same kind of idea as an off-the-rack suit versus a custom-tailored suit. There'll be dimensions of the off-the-rack suit that'll fit just fine, but depending on your shape and size, you want this thing to fit perfectly, and we certainly do, which is why we don't sell just the covers. I won't ship a set of covers to a client. And it's because I did it one time that I saw the results, and I was just appalled, and I didn't want, our name anywhere attached to it.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
Well, so on these older seats, do you refoam them, or do you add foam? How does that work?
Well, depending on how bad they are, we'll either strip them down completely and, use new foam cushions. Like we'll buy reproduction foam and then use that on the frames and then wrap them accordingly. 9 times out of 10, though, unless they're really roached, we'll put a new layer of foam over top that actually brings the seat back up to its nice smooth shape, as well as its size and firmness. And then once we'll test fit that cover on and off a bunch of times, and if we need to, we'll have to tear it back down a little bit and re-sew certain areas to get that tailored fit. So we've got 5 upholstery techs in-house, all really talented people, and I claim no talent in this area whatsoever. Not a mechanic, I'm not a body guy, I'm not an upholsterer, I'm just a guy who loves Porsches. And, I really do love the upholstery part. I love all of it. But when it comes to the seats and stuff, it's really one of those things that's so transformative to the car. And when people get in one of these cars after we've done it, you're getting all those new smells again. You're getting that nice new rich leather smell. And, if you're going all the way to carpeting and everything else, you can really just kind of refresh the car completely.
Well, that's why Kevin won't open the windows in his Y-Sock, because he likes that leather smell.
So it's a good smell.
Casey, you got a question for him as well?
Yeah, I got a couple of the comment that you made, Dave, about the seats being able to transform the car. I have not put seats in my car yet, but thinking back to my Miata days, that was one of the things that we did often, was put track seats in or whatever, because the old kind of gray stuff would just tear up. But it made it feel like a new car. So I can see that point. Where I was going with, you kind of hit on.
I heard, Casey, though, that you just invested so much money in your car that it's going to be a while before you put seats in it. So
well, there's no seats right now.
Episodes here.
Yeah. But you hit on this just a bit. You said you have five folks that are in your upholstery. Are these like 5 original people from the company or the shop that you bought? And if not, how are you finding these people? I mean, this skill set is so limited, and I would imagine very specialized. Where are you finding these people?
It's interesting. That's a great question. To answer the first part of that, no, none of the guys who were part of in any of the companies that I acquired, none of the guys that were the principals of those companies are in the business at this point. In some cases, it just, turns out that they were trying to move off into other scenarios in their career, and so it just worked out. But in other cases, as you can imagine, when you acquire a business, the old owner kind of being around sometimes isn't always the best thing, and so it just becomes everybody kind of parts ways.
But what about the actual craftsmen that are?
No, I get it. Most of these businesses, and this is what's really interesting, and it's the same with Porsche mechanics around the country, and that's why it's so important that we're cultivating new, younger guys in these businesses, because most mechanic shops, most upholstery shops, the principal is also the main craftsman. So the upholstery shop I bought had an owner that, he was a sewer, he was very good at it. But once he was gone, I've had to hire a number of other people. And to answer your question about where you find them, I constantly am scouring the country, or I'm putting ads out, or I'm placing notices on Instagram or Facebook that we're looking for talent. Or fortunately for me, because we've gotten to a certain size and stature inside of the Porsche universe, I've had people that contact me and say, "Hey, are you looking for someone?" And so I've been very fortunate. But it's not always the case. And of all the skills, it is hardest to find the upholsterers. And I think that's one of those arts that is absolutely dying. As it's become a more disposable society. People chuck their seats and they buy new ones, and you don't get that craftsmanship and authenticity. And a lot of the guys that are the principals of these businesses that age out, they get into their 60s or 70s, and then they want to retire. There's nobody to hand it down to because they don't have the skills and they haven't trained anybody. So it's tough. And that's why I've spent a lot of time making sure that we build a good group around, so that it's large enough that I always have people that can do the work, and that we're training up people that can carry on once some of the older guys age out.
So what is your, I'm sorry to jump in, but what is your average age then, would you think, as far as?
Well, it varies. I mean, my oldest guy, besides me, of course, James, but the oldest other employee in the business.
Skewing that, so
yeah, I do drive that up. So, but my oldest upholstery guy's in his 50s, and the rest are probably in their 30s, and I've got maybe one guy in his late 20s.
Well, I would say that's a pretty young crew as far as that skill set goes. So it looks like you have a really good foundation. For some long-term stability there.
Really good people. I mean, I'm really, really pleased with the team that we have right now, and the quality of the work they're turning out is just really terrific. And we only do Porsche. I mean, it's very tempting because of where we are in the Charlotte area. I get lots of calls, say, "Hey, can you do my boat? Hey, can you do this other car?" But we only focus on Porsche because we really want to be good at that. And it's just so much easier to do when you focus exclusively on the one mark.
Yeah,
essentially that's me calling now. That's me calling and spamming you saying, "Hey, can you do my boat?"
Yeah. Well, you send me plenty of business, James. So it's good. We're good.
Yeah, we
Kevin does too. Casey, you got to get an air cooled. Casey, we got to get you an air cooled. Yeah.
Well, we live in
You could do with seats.
And having a niche market, I think that definitely helps you out because you can craft your craftsman. You can, I guess, get better at it. And
every set of seats is a little bit better, right? I mean, you bring somebody new in who may be a great upholstery guy, but hasn't done a specific Porsche seat before. And there's certain angles of stitch lines, and there's certain areas where the seat moves and bends that you need to know how to do the little tuck here or there so you don't get that puckering. And I would say to anybody that's looking to do Porsche upholstery that it's great to, if you're contemplating using somebody in your area, ask them if they've done Porsche seats. If they have, get some pictures. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like I'm super critical of it, of course. And, so I'll look at a car that I'll never say anything bad to anybody about how their upholstery looks, but you can certainly see good work from bad work. And I've seen some great work. There are shops out there that just do outstanding work on Porsche. I feel fortunate because I think we're one of the East Coast folks that do great work. There's a lot more guys on the West Coast, which means that I've got a really nice built-in audience here on the East Coast. And I get a lot of work from New England all the way down to Florida. People are sending us stuff in, either complete cars. I got a complete car 993 today out of Massachusetts. We're doing cars for other Porsche dealers who are entering the restoration challenges and so on. So we got a couple of those cars in the house right now that we're doing work on. It's a lot of fun. It really is. It's cool stuff.
Well, Lee Keane is a big fan.
Yeah. We do all of Lee Keen's work. For those who follow Lee and the Keen Project Safari cars. He's an employee. Lee's work came to us through an employee who I hired, who'd been doing Lee's work from the early days. And Ernest Hemingway is his name, believe it or not. That's the guy's name.
Can't write worth a shit, though.
Yeah, well, fortunately, he's a good upholsterer, though.
Since we have Aaron as a guest, Aaron, I want you to go into great detail of what P car. This is your time to shine. What P car talk is, how it started. Kind of like you gave me a little. Let me get on my soapbox. Yeah, get and elaborate some. Don't just. Yeah, this is what we do.
Because we've been listening since like day one. All of us have been members.
Thank you for that.
You used to shout out the normal members' names, which I was one, but no longer. I've dropped down the total.
Well, I mean, we could bring it back, but I didn't know how much longer that segment was going to get, so I was trying to cut it down.
It's true.
So, eventually, how it started was I was listening to a bunch of podcasts during my work time, and there wasn't anything about Porsches that I could find that I wanted to listen to except Spike. And then Spike and Zuckerman would talk about Eminem, bring on comedy people, do kind of what his focus is I wanted it to be. So I kind of had the concept. I was like, I had tried other podcasts before, like different stuff, not Porsche or anything like that. So I had some of the equipment already, so that wasn't really a barrier. And I had just got my 997.1 C2. I was like, well, I got the water-cooled area covered. And then I'd gone to Cars and Coffee at Reeves for a few times. That's a dealership at Tampa, formerly Reeves, now Morgan. That's where I met Mike. And then Mike and I were not really friends at first because I had driven a BMW a bunch. I just didn't drive my C2. I had an E36 M3 that I would just drive and bomb around in, go to Cars and Coffee.
That's the road.
So we eventually started to talk, and we figured out that he was in the Air Force, I was in the Air Force around the same time, so we had a little bit of relatability there. And he had 964 at the time, or just 964. He just picked it up maybe a few months before then. Just got his speed lines on it, had the top end rebuild, all that sort of thing, before he was ready to bring it out. So we kind of talked for probably a month or so. I ended up going to Rensport, came back, and I was like, that's when I started the Instagram for B-Car Talk. I was just like, oh, I'll just start the Instagram. So I started posting. I was like, called Mike. I was like, hey, how serious do you want to do a podcast? Because like I understood from my point, I was like, well, I got the water cooled side, but I don't know much about the air cooled side. Mike's got that covered, so we'd meet at 50-50, the two halves, and make it work from knowledge perspective. He probably knows some stuff I didn't, and I'd probably fill in the gaps there. As long as we really willing to participate and not call ourselves experts and kind of just go at it and then do researches. And then that's kind of how we started it, was John Benton and other folks kind of doing the internet research and not really getting to know them yet. So that was the approach. And then I also had the bigger thing would be having a club and having stuff that values the club. That's how the drive started as well.
So was the club first, or was the podcast first?
Podcast was first.
Okay.
And then within that, I was like, well, it would kind of be neat to have something of a club, because we didn't like not PCA is bad, but now we're anti-PCA, but we might be a little bit of that. Just because it just doesn't fit our style, the way that we do things. The age group is normally a little bit older than we are for the most part, for the majority. And so that was also another reason to like, hey, if we can hang out with some like-minded people and people are willing to support us, we'd be able to also go to events. And that's why we started going to so many things from the get-go, from racing to all the different shows that are starting to pop up, like Checked It Out and other things. And then do those, lug on the equipment, bring in, and then get some guests on. But that's pretty much the genesis of it. It was, I wanted to do it. I needed somebody in the air-cooled world and that was Mike. And then I said, well, I also know that we need like 3 or 4 episodes. We got those done and dropped them, and then we actually got listens. And the very first, we knew it was kind of not really taking on its own thing, but it kind of weird was we went to DRT for the first time. Walking up to DRT, I'm walking in a little store area. All of a sudden, this person just like pops up in front of me. And it was Jaime. He's like, "Hey, man, are you Peacock Talk?" And he was just super excited. It's like, "Oh, I love Peacock. You got to meet Al. You got to meet this person." I was like, "Okay, well," I was like, "We just talk about Porsches. This is really weird." And that's how we got to know the DRT guys and start going that direction. And then so we started meeting a bunch of different people from there. And then we figured out, well, this is kind of something we like doing. And we knew if we could be consistent, and we had been consistent up to this year, I think we kind of started doing more breaks, but it was every week.
And you guys have had a lot of guests on too, correct?
Yeah. We've had everybody from a bunch of like some factory driver. We had Patrick Long on.
That was cool episode too. Yeah, I like that one.
I really wish we had talked to Daniel Armbruster, that was just CEO of Motorsports, a little bit longer, because he seemed like he was pretty interesting dude for being an engineer and growing up in Germany, and that just interests me. I mean, he did the RS Spider, which is now a Taycan.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, so you guys done that from to artists to drivers to I mean the whole facet, correct?
Anybody can. There's still a bunch of people that we haven't got on that we've been chasing. Rod Emery for like, I don't know, 5 years now. See Rod, say hi. Yeah, cool. See Rod, say hi. Yeah, sure. See Rod.
And then you guys started to do a drive, and that's how we met. So what led you guys to do the drive?
The drive is what I felt like the members didn't. I didn't feel like there was value, to be honest, outside like the decals and things like that, the membership card that we kind of started, but there was a lot of upkeep. And then I wasn't seeing value in myself. So I was like, I don't see how a member would be seeing value. So let's do something where one, we can meet in person, because that'd be something to be cool.
Well, I did get my signed photo of Mike. He shipped that out for you.
Okay. You put that right next to like a David Hasselhoff picture too. Just
Okay. So you did your drive.
So the drive. Well, first of all, we didn't think anybody was going to sign up for the drive. So the fact that first year anybody ever signed up, that was something. I wish I had organized that first one a little bit better, but that's just first time figuring it out. I'd been to Helen a ton of times, from Solo for the Volkswagen stuff, because I had a Mark IV GTI back in the day. So I liked the area, and I knew a decent amount about it. Been there with my wife, Kristen, a ton of times. So then we did that. And then after we figured out it was a thing, we continued on the next couple times to then grow the drive. Then we started selling it out that third year. Then we sold out our clothes.
Yeah, there's still a wait list on each year, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
What point did you?
Crazy.
What point did you start the Patreon?
I switched that from the website because there's a lot of things on the back end, from shipping, keeping up with that, automatic renewals, things that happen.
It was all very confusing originally.
Yeah, there was a lot of things where Patreon was going to button things up. The only reason we resisted is because there's a percentage that comes out on the back end for all the management. But that makes it easier. I try to pare it down to a couple things, because at first we were trying to do like $1, $10, like really get a support level where anybody could support. But from the numbers, you could see where it didn't really matter. There's kind of a price point, 2 price points that make sense, and then kind of continued on from there. But we haven't really marketed heavily enough, in my opinion. We've just been trying to grow it as organic kind of as possible. I'm working on a couple of things locally. Like I'm going to just start doing, like you did, James. So if you came to our Cars and Coffee that we're doing at the Porsche on Central, I've shipped these out, but I have silicone bracelets now for all the P-Car Club members. Come to it, free coffee.
Nice.
So
cool.
So that's
but then you guys do. You guys with the drive.
We do giveaways every month too. That's something that nobody's been doing. And that's also a task of finding people wanting to sponsor things, and that, like Dave from Sonderwerks, and watches. We gave away. I just remember this. We IMSA rain tires. that was some of the giveaways that we've done. Like it's been.
Didn't you just give away a stuffed
the plushie
dinosaur?
Yeah, Rexy. Yeah, I did. He's away. Yeah, he's away, but I know he has it.
So I mean, you've given and I think almost every member has usually gotten something.
Yeah, I keep track.
Because
I
know
have 7 Sonderwerks toolkits that I've won from the art.
The fact that you won that at the drive made that even better.
I won a toolkit on a drive too that we just went on. So you guys are always giving away good prizes as well. I mean, it's not just what did we get? Those magazines that we got at that one thing. It was
like the Porsche original parts.
It's not that. Yeah. I mean, these guys are giving away high-end stuff. Anywhere from
limited edition
stuff, and watches. It doesn't. I mean, it's everything that I can find. I normally go try to be good about finding something I'd want. I know the plushie might not be everybody's forte, but hey, winning
loved
it.
Amazing. He loved it.
Absolutely.
Yes. Can't go buy one. That's
so you guys he actually bought 50 of them to put on his dashboard.
Nice. Like the duckies,
just like Jeep. The Jeep guys. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. There you go. That's gonna start handing them out.
Yes.
He can't stand himself. He's gonna go. There it is.
Don't break that seal.
Job's working. You can do it.
Live on the podcast. Casey opens it.
Tune in.
So you guys do giveaways, and you guys do usually it's a weekly podcast. And when does that come out?
Every Thursday, 6 a.m. I've been doing it differently now, so I've been releasing.
We've noticed
on Thursdays or Wednesday nights. Thank you to anybody that's a club member on Patreon, and then for anybody that's not, it's on Mondays.
Okay.
There might be a video component coming back to it for you guys, just inside baseball.
Cool. How has the part going on the podcast, and then the second part going for members on Patreon? How's that going? Has there been any feedback?
I can't really track that, to be honest. There's been more comments and things. I think there's been more engagement that way.
It's cool.
That I'm seeing in DMs and outside of just Patreon. So I know that. As far as like downloads, I know what the membership is, so I know what it would be like, but I can't track it because it goes outside of it. But for the most part, I haven't seen anything like go down because of people not getting the secret sauce and getting the extra stuff. But I also thought that was a value add, another value add we weren't doing initially, and maybe we are a little bit more raw and talk about things, and we seem to always have a good 30-minute session or more. And I'm probably going to try to bring back live streams as well.
And then you have another passion project, correct?
Oh, I do. Yeah. So I randomly started Metzger's Only just because I just have a Metzger, and I figured that would be something to do on like a million other Instagrams I have, and this one's actually getting some traction. And
you got quite a bit of traction.
Oh yeah, it's taken off.
And I've gotten tons of different people that subscribe. They're like, okay, well that's new. And I think you have offers and to drive cars. I can go drive a 4.0.
How many?
So someone was like,
how many? You guys have what? 30,000 plus in not even a year of
31 and a half, I think. Yeah.
So you're doing a drive too? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's true. I'm doing another drive because why not? Why not do 2 drives?
I mean, we only have 30 only 30 listeners, but I mean, hey,
somebody. We'll get there.
We'll put this on repeat in 2 years, and then
definitely. How many? Because Mike just made a comment on that thing on the post I made on the Instagram where we didn't have GT cars yet. So yeah, there'll be a look back for sure.
Yeah.
So for the Metzger's drive, it's going to be the same place I'm doing Foreign at, just different time of year. And it's going to be end of August. It's smaller. It's only 20 people. Same leaders are coming in, different roads, different restaurant. I've gotten promises from a bunch of different people that really can't commit to being there. So we'll see if they show up or not.
What has your like sign up been? Or
It's been slow.
Yeah,
it's been slow. I've been trying. I had to lock everything down a couple
Is
months
it still
back.
open? Can people still
Yeah,
sign
it's
up?
still open. Yeah, there's still spots.
well, and
Yeah, that's cool.
as you know,
If
Aaron,
you have a
'cause you-
Metzger?
Yeah, if you have a Metzger, so anything that's at a Metzger engine, that'd be 2008 GT3, 996 turbos that'd be before that. Anything with a Metzger engine, just look at Metzger, you'll figure it out. It's too spread out to be specific about it.
yeah, and Aaron,
You'll know.
You know, because you've helped a lot of the little rally I'm putting together. It's hard to get people to jump in on that stuff.
And I think partly it's marketing because if they don't see it, they can't know how good it's going to be. Secondly, you're coming in cold for a lot of these. I've talked to so many people and they're like, "Well, I live here." I'm like, "Well, I'm driving 10 hours." So that's like once you start having the conversations, start having the objections, and then you start posting, and you go, "Well, I'm doing this, this, and this." Yeah, you start hitting those objections.
It's almost. I'm sure you saw this. I'm sure you saw this in Farron too. But people want to see like, oh, it succeeded one year and it was fun.
Yeah,
I'll show up.
All you have to do, right? All you have to do is get the FOMO going.
Yeah,
because you missed it.
100%. Because I know there's a bunch of people like, well, I live in Connecticut, but he's got 5 cars. I'm like, you could come and you could come do this.
That's right. That's right.
But there's a couple people that have been reaching out. He's like, oh yeah, well, I might come down. And he sent me a video on Instagram, and it was showing me his, I think it's 3RS. And I watched it go by. I was cool, and I noticed what he was driving. He was driving a CGT. I was like, oh, you're driving your CGT while filming your 3RS. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
He said he'd be by as long as it works out. No, he's having a good time.
Yeah,
and that's how your first one started. I mean, I think there was 6 of us. I was one of those.
So that's the biggest thing too. Like I knew if I don't do it because I think it's going to be small, it'll never happen. And if I do it and just if it's 6 people, 8 people,
then they have a fucking great time. Exactly right.
They will.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not your first rodeo either. So you're able to go in there and go, okay, this is what I need to do. This is what I can expect. I've ticked all the boxes. Everything is set up. And now let's just go have a good time.
It really makes it easier because it's not a big party. So getting in anywhere is not going to be crazy. Right. I don't need as many venue spaces or a large space. I just need privates, bartender, that sort of thing. I know that the strings the bowl to make it something.
And just to let you guys know too, I mean, hey, it's the same in my aspect. I have an online business that is very successful, that I've been doing it for 14 years now. And I had thought, well, hey, all I have to do is just copy exactly everything and I hit the switch, but I didn't realize that all the stuff that I don't want to do now, I did back then, i.e. Forums, Facebook, marketing. I thought if I just put the stuff in, because it's simple, I sit back and wait for the money to come in, and it has not happened. So
you shoot the photo of your feet, put it up on your OnlyFans, and the money rolls in.
No, that's yes.
And it's absolutely, there's so much legwork that, about these rallies or gatherings or whatever that I didn't realize. And Aaron has obviously, like I said, helped me immensely in getting this organized. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And, Farron was a, pay one price and everything's taken care of, which I think is freaking awesome. So much so that I implemented that to where hopefully people, when they show up, they don't have to bring out their wallet at all. It's all there. And that was all your idea. And I think it's phenomenal. And it really made Farron a lot of fun. I missed the first one. I think apparently I was on the second one.
No, you're on third one.
Third one?
Third. We started the third.
Okay. So on the third one, it was
this one's going to fit with that.
It was a buttoned up machine. It was great.
Well, yeah. I think what's cool is that the one place at this point
too, like the one place to lodge at, and then kind of make it a single focal point. I think that that sells it.
And And the thing is at this point, there are a lot of rallies out there. You can go
you gotta be
every
different.
weekend, but it is finding something a little bit different, be it the single location, be it a smaller group, be
The
it
people.
a certain amount of
The people in
routes,
general.
The people.
right? Be it the people, be it specific cars, or just having hired leaders. I mean, I think that right there is probably
Clutch.
because everyone who is showing up is going to have a good time because they don't have the additional pressure of leading.
Kevin doesn't have to lead.
Right.
That was the sole reason. I was like, you know what?
And for me, we don't have to get lost.
Well, and they also very communicative to themselves. And like there was a lot of things that were happening that I was like, okay, this happened, or they know where to.
Yeah.
They're always.
As a professional, that's what they do. They do it.
Yeah. They were pro.
Yeah, that's what he does. I mean, that's his job. He leads cars, not just Porsche, but McLaren's, all kinds of everything. So
we should try to get him on here. He'd probably be a good guest about that sort of thing.
Well, now that we broke the seal.
Yeah.
I'll text them if you guys want.
So yeah, I mean, well, good. I'm glad you've started the new passion project. Hopefully, it will take off. I know it takes time. I'm glad you were able to come in at short notice. I thought, you know what, this would be fun. And for the audience, James, in case you did not know this, it was more of a, hey, let's see what I got.
Kevin's in.